All right, so we'll go ahead and call the school board meeting into order at this time. And board members, I have several changes to the agenda, and please bear with me as I read through this half page. Item 2.1, changes to agenda. First of all, administrative personnel appointments, added item 6.1, appointment of specialist human resources. Consent agenda, deleted item 8.13, ground lease agreement between the School Board of Okaloosa County, Florida, and the United States of America by and through the Secretary of the United States Air Force. Superintendent's Human Resources recommendations, added item 9.11, employee termination, added item 9.12, employee termination. Discussion agenda, added item 10.2, legislative budget request for funds to support the development and expansion of the Okaloosa School District Advanced Manufacturing Academy. Added item 10.3, legislative budget request for funds to support the development of coding academies in 6 elementary schools at the 4th grade level. Construction program owners representatives business, added 11.4, requests the school district's TPM to develop a pre-GMP for the Florosa Elementary School on-campus traffic flow improvement project. I'm looking for a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
I'll second.
second by Dr. Kelly. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, board members, so we'll move through the agenda as we customarily do. And so, of course, on Section 3 for recognitions, we're showing none of those tonight. On Section 4, visitors, we already had Okaloosa County Commissioner Nathan Boyles, who discussed the access issues at Florosa and Mary Esther Elementary School at our workshop on Thursday. Public comment, do we have any blue cards? Thank you, Ms. Mary. Administrative personnel appointments, Mr. Chambers, this means you. 6.1. Appointment of specialist human resources recommended by Superintendent Chambers for approval. Mr. Chambers. Welcome.
Thank you, sir. Good evening. It's my honor to read a little information on Miss Cody. So Ashley Cody is an Okaloosa County parent, as well as a proud military spouse of the 7th Special Forces Group, Airborne. Ashley earned a Bachelor of Science degree in Communication from Old Dominion University and a Master of Business Administration degree with a specialization in Human Resource Management from American Intercontinental University. During her graduate studies, Ashley was inducted into the MU Epsilon chapter of International Business Honor Society, Delta Mu Delta, and shortly after graduating launched her HR career as an employee of Frito-Lay North America. Throughout her career, Ashley has played an active role in serving her local and military communities. In Fort Campbell, Kentucky, she volunteered many hours of service to the Relocation Readiness Program and later became both a U.S. Army 2.0 family team building leader and a certified local U.S. Army facilitator. Ashley has been married to her amazing husband, Chief Warrant Officer 2, Daryl Ronaldo Cody Jr., for 12 years. They have 2 children, Josiah and Aaliyah, both currently enrolled in Okaloosa County schools.
Excellent, Mr. Chambers. Thank you. Board members, I'm looking for a motion to approve the appointment as recommended by Superintendent Chambers.
I'll move the approval of the appointment.
And I'll
Motion
second.
by Mr. Destin.
I'll second it.
Mr. Bryant seconds. All right, let's all vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. Congratulations. Bring her forward, Mr. Chambers. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to be a part of the team. Thank you.
Oh, sure. Okay.
There you go.
All right, all right.
Thank
Sometimes we have the family come forward and
Okay, good evening.
photos or whatever. If I forget anything, tell me.
Just read that one for you, sir.
You get it. All right, folks, so we'll continue to move through the agenda. We're on Section 7 now, Committee and Staff Reports. These were presented during the workshop. First of all, we have in-county travel paid for the period of December 13, 2018 through January 9, 2019, presented by Mrs. Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.2, out-of-county travel paid for the period of December 13, 2018 through January 9, 2019, again presented by Mrs. Scallon, Chief Financial Officer. 7.3, quarterly report, short-term facility use contracts and lease agreements under the $5,000 threshold, presented by Mr. Vince Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing. 7.4, quarterly report, service agreements under the $5,000 threshold for internal and budgetary funds, presented by Mr. Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing. And then 7.5, quarterly report, service agreements for law enforcement, presented by Mr. Wyndham, Program Director Purchasing. And board members, that now takes us to consent agenda, Section 8. And so I'm looking for an approval of the consent agenda. Need a motion.
I'll move we approve consent agenda.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
I'll second it.
second by Mrs. Evancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, colleagues, that means we have to scroll way on down to Section 9, Superintendent's Human Resources Recommendations. 9.1 is an information item requiring no action on our part. 9.1 would be employees on administrative leave, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources. 9.2 is also an information item requiring no action on our part. That is Deferred Retirement Option Program dropped, presented by Mrs. Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources. 9.3 is an action item. This will require motion, board members. Out-of-field report for the 2018-2019 school year, presented by Ms. Karen Peak, Program Director of Professional Services, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Dr. Kelly,
Second.
second by Mrs. Evancheck. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.4, request to double fill the principal position at Okaloosa STEM Academy, presented by Mrs. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second it.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.5, request to double fill the Athletic Director position at Niceville High School, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.6, personnel recommendations, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
I move it.
Motion by Mrs. Evancheck. Need a second.
Second.
Second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.7, employment separations, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.8, employee transfers, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Needing a motion.
I move it.
That was close. It's tied.
Go ahead. Go ahead. and I'll-
All right, deferred to Mrs. Evancheck. Need a second?
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Kelly. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.9, reinstatement reimbursement of sick leave due to line of duty illness, injury, medical examination, presented by Mrs. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Seeing or hearing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.10, leave without pay, presented by Ms. Lindsay Maxey, Program Director, Human Resources, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Need a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? Seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 9.11, employee termination recommended by the superintendent for approval. I need a motion.
I'll move it.
Motion by Ms. Zavanchek,
Second.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion?
Mr. Chairman, one item, I had a conversation this afternoon, a call from Attorney Rob Larkin, who's been representing the superintendent in these two matters, these two items, and there is a correction to the letter that was sent out to the employee and to the board in regard to a statutory site.
Okay.
I want to correct that for the record, and it appears at the end of the letters, next to last paragraph, the site should be section 1012.33 Florida statutes.
All right, so there's a correction to the statute.
That's correct.
That's in correction in both letters.
Both letters for 9.11 and 9.12.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Attorney.
Yes, sir.
Any further discussion?
I would just like to say that for me, as a board member, it's very important that we handle these HR matters with as much integrity and following the law to the nth degree as we humanly know possible. I think that the consistency that we start to deal with these matters is very important to me, and I think with our voting public as well. So,
Thank you, Dr. Kelly. Anything else, colleagues? Let's call the question. All in favor, raise your hand. Motion carries 5-0. Item 9.12, employee termination recommended by the superintendent for approval with the correction indicated earlier by Mr. McInnes. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Destin.
Second. I'll second that.
Second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion? Hearing or seeing none, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, so moving now to Section 10, Item 10.1, Legislative Budget Request, LBR, for school buses to ease the traffic pattern along Hurlburt Field, Florosa Elementary School corridor. And board members, you'll recall that that item we read earlier on the consent agenda. 10.1.
The first item, Mr. Chairman, would be to have a motion to take it off the table to receive the superintendent's recommendation.
Exactly. All right, so this was a motion that Mr. Destin had made, I believe, if I recall correctly, that we would delay this, put it on the table for 2 weeks. And so now we need a motion, Mr. Attorney, to take it off the
Yes,
table.
sir.
Is that correct?
Question, Chairman. Without a motion to remove from the table, it stays tabled, correct?
Well, it was tabled to a date
Time
certain, so I would believe that you would need to deal with it at this meeting or.
Okay. I'll move to remove it from the table.
Motion by Mr. Destin, to remove from the table. Need a second.
I'll second.
Second by Dr. Kelly. Further discussion, board members. Now, yeah.
It appears we addressed this issue with our improvements we're going to try to do at Florosa. Therefore, and you can correct me, Mr. McGinnis, if we don't make a motion to approve, then it's not approved.
That's correct, but we need to vote first on untabling.
Okay.
All right, so let's go ahead and call the question to untable. All in favor, raise your hand, please. All right, motion carries 5-0. All right, so now I think Mr. Destin's point
Right,
comes
and
forward.
since you don't make a motion to not approve,
Right.
just an absence of a motion will accomplish that, correct?
And it may be that the superintendent's recommendation may not be calling for a motion, so you might want to.
Superintendent, you modifying the recommendation that you have here?
yes, sir. So I do want to say, just to reiterate, we have spoken with Colonel Dorman, we have spoken with Senator Gaynor, we have spoken with Representative Mel Ponder, as well as some county officials. We do have a recommendation that we go with the Phase 1 that we talked about. And if you don't mind, I'd have Mr. Horton come up just to give a few specifics as to that.
All right.
I think it's coming up later in the agenda.
Yeah, I got 10.2 and 10.3.
I think at this point, it's just a matter of whether the superintendent's recommending that you act on 10.1 or that you not move forward on the buses. That would be the issue in front of you.
Correct, so,
So there's no recommendation.
correct.
All right, is that sufficient, Mr. McGinnis?
Yes, sir.
All right, so let's move on now to 10.2. Legislative budget request for funds to support the development and expansion of the Okaloosa County School District Advanced Manufacturing Academy, presented by Ms. April Branscombe, Program Director, Career Technical Education, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
I will move that we approve that one.
Motion by Mr.
Second.
Destin,
Second.
second by Mr. Bryant. Any discussion?
I would just like to thank April and her team and everybody that's been involved in this, especially our community partners. This is huge. So it's a win for our students, and I just want to again say thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bryant.
Yeah, I have something on that.
Sure.
I see that we're seeking funds. Ms. Branscombe's here? Okay. Hi, how you doing? This is such a great program, but, so, once this is approved, you're going to submit for this funding?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. And so, when do you anticipate this going into effect if everything's approved and we get the funding?
Well, it all kind of hinges on the date of receiving the approval.
Right.
Right now, the plan is to not actually open and transfer the academy to the Crestview and football facilities until 2020, 2021. So
Right.
we're looking a couple of years out still.
So not this coming school year, but the next?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay.
It'll give us time to get everything in place and order all the equipment and build the facilities, because right now, we're looking at Bob Sykes Airport. Dr. Shu has a facility up in Crestview,
Mhm.
and we will be partnering with Northwest Florida State College, and so our students would be attending campus on their facility, and they're in the process of the architectural structure and costing all of that out and getting the facility built. So we're looking at 53 weeks just for that to happen.
Okay.
So it'll still be some time before that
Are you
occurs.
modeling this after any other?
No, we're
We're pilot-
yes,
we're in,
ma'am.
right?
We're going to be
Okay,
piloting
that's
this.
great.
People are going to be modeling after us.
There you go. Okay, great. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank
Any
you,
other
Ms.
questions?
Branscombe. Just to say that I think what we're approving is for us to submit a request to the legislature, and then we hope everybody wishes us good luck when we do
Yes,
that.
that's right. I'm sure they will.
All right, okay. So any further discussion on this particular item?
Dr. White, if you
Mr.
don't mind,
Chambers.
one piece, I think you would be proud of the meeting that we had on Friday. April Branscombe was absolutely fantastic, but around the table, Dr. Stevenson, Dr. Shu, and their various groups. But we've also reached out to Nathan Sparks with the EDC, Linda Sumlin as well. So there's a great community partnership with this, so we very much appreciate the partnership that we have right now going forward.
Okay. Anything else, colleagues?
So I've always admired the work that April has done and appreciate her new partner back there too. Thank you for both of you for what you do.
All right, let's go ahead and call the question. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, and so Mr. Horton, after we finish 10.3, sir, I thought maybe Mr. Chambers may want you to come forward after we finish the next item. All right, 10.3, legislative budget requests for funds to support the development of coding academies in 6 elementary schools at the 4th grade level, presented again by Ms. April Branscombe, Program Director, Career Technical Education, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second?
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion?
Another fabulous, everybody's going to want to be here, and that's great. Thank you again, Ms. Francis. This is very good, exciting.
All right, thank you, Ms. Vancheck. Anything else? All right, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, Mr. Horton, I think you had some information you could share regarding the Fluorosa matter, Superintendent?
Please.
All right.
Thank you, Dr. White. As you know, group has been meeting for some time to consider options, and at the school board workshop, we presented some drawings and sketches. At this time, what we're requesting under one of the 11-point items is just the permission to request a pre-GMP from Jacobs Titan. So there's no funding requirement tonight, but just wanted the board's approval to go out and get that pre-GMP to see what the on-site Fluorosa traffic flow solution would cost out to be from at least a pre-GMP. So we're kind of 2 steps away from getting that final amount.
All right. All right, Mr. Horton, and when we get to 11.4, we may call you back up. All right, thank
Somebody
you.
called me.
All right, all right. That gets us through the items in Section 10. So let's move on now to Section 11, Construction Program Owners Representatives Business. 11.1, Program Status Report by the Board's Representative to the Construction Program. Mr. Destin?
Chairman, I had the pleasure of having Ms. Scanlon describe these much better than I would and could, but basically we're working on a project at Edge, and we're getting TPMs on a program at GMPs at the STEM Academy. And we also have a section that's on our security upgrades that'll be district-wide. And we're going to get a TMP on that for a GMP price. And then the 11.4, the item discussed by
All right.
Mr. Horton, which is Fluorosa.
Okay. All right, sir.
And if we'll go through them one at a time.
Right.
I'll turn that back over to you.
All right, I know you've been busy with that group, so we'll go ahead and proceed then. 11.2, TPM Program Number 6, Task Order Number 1, Pre-GMP Roof Replacement Projects at Edge Elementary School, STEM Academy, and Crestview High School. Presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Board members, you've heard Mr. Destin say that he's been involved in this process, so I'm looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion?
I just have a comment.
Sure.
I'd like to thank my colleague, Mr. Destin, for jumping in there and looking at these issues that we have, and look forward to many more reports of what we can do to improve the infrastructure in our schools.
Well, I'll be the first one to admit that it's the staff that does all the hard work, and, it's a pleasure to work with them.
Thank you both. All right, without any further discussion, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. 11.3, TPM Program Number 6, Task Order Number 2, Pre-GMP District-Wide School Security Upgrade Project Phase 1, presented by Mr. Steve Bolton, Director of Facilities Planning and Maintenance, and recommended by the Superintendent for approval. Looking for a motion.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
Second.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion?
Yes, I know we don't discuss the specifics because it is a security, that it says it's district-wide. So is this, does this necessarily mean something at every school, or how have we?
Mr. Bolton's going to come on
Oh,
up.
okay, Mr. Bolton. Thank you, Mr. Bolton. Without giving the security piece away, can you kind of just give us the overall on that?
Yes, ma'am. We did visit every school. We are starting with the top 10 that we sense is the most critical, and then we'll go from there. We'll take 10 at a time with the TPM.
Okay, so that's what
Manager.
this is, those top 10?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay, thank you, sir, I appreciate that.
All right, and, excuse me, anything else?
I do.
Okay, Mr. Bryant.
Mr. Chambers, since that was mentioned, I don't recall seeing that list. Is there any way we can get a copy of that list?
Absolutely.
They have it available.
Okay, yeah.
They'll get it for you.
Okay.
All right, anything else, board members? All right, let's call the question. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, 11.4, requested the school district's TPM to develop a pre-GMP for the Fluorosa Elementary School on-campus traffic flow improvement project, presented by Dr. Bill Smith, specialist, and recommended by the superintendent for approval. We've talked all around it, and we even talked about it. Looking for a motion.
I'll move we approve that one.
Motion by Mr. Destin,
I'll second it.
second by Ms. Evancheck. Any further discussion or questions, board members?
I would just like to say one more time, I appreciate the staff and the superintendent hustling on coming up with a reasonable step towards solving the problems out there. We may have to do more, but this is a very good first step, and I think will make a big difference. And they worked hard and they worked fast.
Excellent.
Yeah, I agreed, and Principal Massey's here, and she's smiling a little bit more than about that, and that's great. And that's, bottom line, it's the best thing for those students out there, keep them safe. So,
And I was going to echo Ms. Evancheck's comments on Ms. Massey, how she's been a very good leader as far as getting everybody informed, and so thank you for all of your efforts.
All right, then, with no further discussion, it's time to vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0. All right, Section 12, Information Technology Seat Management, no business there. Section 13, Mr. Attorney, your business, sir.
Just one item, Mr. Chairman. As I mentioned earlier, in accordance with the board's recent approvals, we did bring in Attorney Rob Larkin to work with the superintendent on the two employment matters that were tonight on the agenda under 911 and 912. I would ask that the board now authorize Attorney Larkin and that firm to continue that representation should there be any appeals of those matters.
So it looks like you need a motion.
Yes, sir.
Looking for a motion, board members.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Bryant,
I'll second that.
second by Mr. Destin. Any discussion? All right, let's vote. All in favor? Motion carries 5-0.
That's all I have.
All right, thank you, Mr. McInnes. All right, Superintendent, your business, sir. I see you had some field trip requests, but you may have some other matters tonight.
Yes, sir.
All right.
And I do have a few items I just want to address briefly.
Sure.
I do want to just address some of the events of today, and I do have a prepared statement that I would just
All right.
like to read.
Sure.
After careful consideration, I made the decision to recommend the terminations of Henry Kelly and Andy Johnson, effective immediately. While initially I had no plans to make personnel moves, I felt compelled to do so in these instances. As superintendent, my foremost priorities are to ensure the safety of our students and reestablish the community's confidence in the district to handle things the right way. I want to reiterate that the district is moving in a new and different direction that will emphasize legal compliance, accountability, and transparency. These personnel decisions are consistent with these priorities and principles. Moving forward, I pledge to devote my full energy and attention in furtherance of these priorities and will endeavor to manage the district in accordance with these principles.
All right, thank you, sir.
And then on a separate note, unfortunately, we had a few arrests today. And I do want to say we had a press conference today at the sheriff's office, and I do thank Sheriff Ashley and the sheriff's department for doing a thorough investigation. But I do want to say we have approximately 4,000 employees in this school district, and 99% of them, and maybe even more if we can go to the decimals, are doing the right thing each and every day for our students. But I do want to say, I think the board would agree, and I would agree as well, that we cannot tolerate the actions or the inactions that would result in the harm of any of our students. These two different events that occurred, when they were brought to our attention, we immediately acted. We contacted DCF, we contacted the Sheriff's Department, who took over the investigation, and today was kind of the conclusion of that. But I do want to reiterate to the parents that, the safety of our students is first and foremost in all that we do. And, this is not a good day in this instance, but once again, I just want to reiterate, we have amazing employees, and 99.9% of them are doing what they need to do every day for our kids because they love them and they care about them. So thank you.
Thank you, Superintendent Chambers.
And the last thing that I have was I was just going to ask Mr. Horton just to give a quick weather update with some of the inclement weather coming forward.
As long as the bridges don't freeze, we're okay.
We appear to be in good shape. I won't tell you who the first person was who texted me about anything. So we did put out on our Facebook and notify our principals about keeping an eye on the weather. It looks like we'll have some rain late night tonight, in the morning, and then the temperature is going to start to drop. But at this point, we're in communication with Ken Wolf at the Emergency Operations Center, and schools are open, and schools will be open, and we'll keep providing updates to parents as need be. We've checked on the sports and athletic schedules for tomorrow night when the weather's cold, and there's a lot of basketball going on, and that's going to be in heated gyms, which would be fine. There's some high school soccer going on, so we're working with those principals closely. The general rule of thumb on those, if it's not raining and sleeting and snowing, then the soccer families are slightly different breed, and so they generally...
It's all on tape.
in a good way, But we're working in communication with those principals as well, because some of the events are outside of our district too, so we're coordinating with those schools as well, but keeping folks informed on the front end.
Very good.
Okay?
Excellent.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Horton. Anything else, Superintendent?
No, sir.
All right. So, colleagues, that takes us down to Section 15, Board Members' Announcements and Requests for Information. And so, Mr. Destin, sir, I'll start with you.
I don't think I have anything tonight, Chairman. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Bryan.
Just two things, and I want to just say to Mr. Horton, I was a soccer parent, so I know. And being in Crestview, you know it's always 10 degrees colder at Jack Foster Stadium. But also just wanted to thank our amazing band leaders out there. We had the opportunity with the superintendent Saturday to go and watch our amazing band students. What a great performance. And one piece that the high school band had to play was one that had not been performed at all. It was actually sent to the director for them to give it its initial performance. So our band program, our music programs, we are very fortunate and blessed to have so many great leaders who are involved in our band program. So.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Bryan. Dr. Kelly.
Well, I do have a few, but first of all, as an attendee from many soccer games and having the hot spots and the embroidered socks and the little portable heaters and everything else and still not be able to get warm, I know your point. But secondly, that Okaloosa County Honors Band concert is always terrific. I think this was about my 15th one to attend. 7 years of my daughter being in the Big Red Marching Machine and the Richburg Band before that, and then on my own attending just to support those band parents and band directors. That was really an event to see. If you have not been to one, put it on your calendar for next year. I also wanted to mention that this week, depending on what day, if you counted the work days or not, we celebrated the 100th day of school, and many of our schools had Literacy Day or Read-Along Day, and some of them have them coming up this week. So those are exciting too. If you can be a volunteer reader in some of our schools, please do that. You'll enjoy reading to those young people. I said at the workshop, so I'll say publicly for those who were not at the workshop and don't watch the tapes, we had our first meeting of the School Health Advisory Council, and Terry Schroeder directs that right now. She's here tonight. I just want to say a shout out to all of our school nurses and to all of the coordination that Terry and her staff do for us, because that health of our students is really a huge undertaking. Just consider one situation that happens of many throughout the year. For instance, getting the flu vaccinations, enough vaccines to the right schools at the right time in the right dosage for all of those students. It's just remarkable, and the things they do throughout the school year. So thank you for that meeting, Terry. I wanted to also say that this afternoon I attended a very interesting meeting on the proposal for a Destin High School. Had lots of community leaders there. It was a very interesting meeting. And then lastly, I'll just say, as I said at the workshop, in recent weeks we've lost 3 of our Okaloosa legends, our Okaloosa outstanding educators. One was a former superintendent, Ms. Bernadette Cover, and one was a former principal of 20 years at Crestview High School, Ronnie Davis, who also coached before he was principal. I think he's only outlived by Richard Bounds as being the longest running principal at their school. So, and Gerald Roper was a teacher in our school system. He was actually on my faculty at Bruner Middle School for many, many years, and then he retired as a homebound teacher with 40 years of service in our district. So I just think that it's appropriate that we pause a minute to honor those families of our legendary leaders in Okaloosa County schools. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Dr.
Thank you.
Mrs. Vanchek.
Yes, please, thank you. First of all, I will be reading this Friday to some second graders. That's gonna be the highlight of my week. So it's Literacy Week, so I'm excited. I'll be going to Shalimar Elementary. I'm gonna be reading Junie B. Jones, so I'm looking forward to that. The other thing is we have a science fair Thursday. It's at the fairgrounds. Always fascinating projects that these students do, so if you get a chance, it is open to the public starting at 1 o'clock out there. You want to check that out. The next thing, I do see members of our Public Schools Foundation out there, and I want to remind the public that if you, as you're getting it's close to the end of the month, so start looking at renewing your license plate. The new style of the education plate is at all the offices, and the extra cost for that goes back into our foundation. It's one of the few things that we get to keep every penny, and that goes to those great projects that we're able to give scholarships to students and grants to teachers from that. So when you're renewing your license plate, tell them that you want the support education one. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Ms. Evancheck. And the only thing I would add is I'll see you at the Teacher of the Year banquet coming up. All right, so now we're moving on to Section 16. Any public comment for anyone desiring to address the school board? I don't believe we had any blue cards turned in. So we'll move on to Section 17. This meeting is adjourned.